Welcome to Book Chat. My name is Maureen Tai, and today is a very special day because I have with me Dora Tsang, who is a longtime Lama resident, an artist, an illustrator, and a poet, and actually a pilgrim as well. But we are here to celebrate Dora's YA verse memoir, Blue Squared, which was published this year in 2022 and is a finalist for the Scholastic Asian Book Awards. It's a long time coming, and without further ado, I'll pass you over to Dora to read from her wonderful verse memoir. Dora.
Yes, thank you. So I want to thank Maureen for organizing this book chat, book shah. That's why we have a cat here. And also thank you for everybody for coming. And I haven't invited all my friends, but I have chosen those who are very special in helping me to make this book coming. And some of you have already read the book, but some of you haven't. So I've chosen three parts of the book so that I give you a little taste of what the book is about. So Maureen, she'll be helping me reading the first part. If you want to take a look, it's on page 27. The first part would be on page 27.
You don't have to sing it. It's not here.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah. Dinner time. Dinner time is the time we sort of together in flat 327, and we sort of speak, not talk.
1,000 university students gather at Blue Square today, mourning the death of Yao Jiaogan.
So mom to brother. Have some fish, very fresh. You don't eat enough fish, eat some pork.
Yao Jiaogan led a series of political movements in the 70s.
So this part is dead. Does Uncle Ho know anything? He farmed like me in the mainland in the 70s. He can't even read. Now he's the boss. His apartment is $1.5 million. What does he know?
We know very little about his 14 years of house arrest. Yao died at home.
A private apartment, lucky. Some people get lucky.
The university students have been gathering at Blue Square.
We never get lucky, never. Look at Uncle Yo. All his sons went to universities. Drink more soup.
For more than 24 hours.
Ginseng soup brewing for 4 hours. One son is a lawyer. Drink more. One son is a doctor.
Mourning activities also take place in other big cities in China.
One son has a factory in China. You don't listen, it's so little. Even sons-in-law have brought apartments. 2 million. Just 2 spoons of rice. They have sons, I have a son. They have luck, I have none.
Some students pledged a hunger strike.
See how thin you look. I look at the revolving ceiling fan moving, trying to stir the sound to get them in tune, in vain. While Dad rewinds his tape and plays again and again. Uncle Ho knows anything. Uncle Yo. Uncle Yo, Uncle Ho, this son, that son, this apartment, that apartment, 1 million, 2 million. Do you have anything new? Second sister shouts. She bangs her bowl onto the table and storms away. This is the first part. The second part I want to read is on page 101. So, alone I stand, coke in hand, door swings open, I drop the can. I dash to him, my arms wrap his frail legs. His jeans smell faintly of Marlboros. Hold and hold the pendulum of his life dangling from the ceiling. Hold and hold. Puddles of coke rest deadly on the floor. Stop. I try to stop the time, but time doesn't give us the thinnest damn chance. Damn, I try to scream, but my voice becomes the end of an ant, too small, even, to stir the air a little bit. So the first part gives you a taste of the background of the story, the setting. The one I read just now give you the one major incident, which is a suicide. And then, because of that, the book is about eating disorders. So because of that, there's then the protagonist has developed eating disorder, and the mom tries very hard to help her, although she doesn't know what's happening. So the third part is on page 207, which is when the mother is trying to bring the girl to the mainland to find ways to heal her. So this is the part when after they have gone to see a healer or a soothsayer to find out what's wrong with the protagonist.
Just remind us, how old is the protagonist through the book?
The story starts when she was 11, but it's only a little bit. But I would say she's about 13, 14 when she really encounters the problem. So now I read the last part, which is on 207. I ran and ran towards the beach nearby. I wait and wait. Finally, Mom calls me. In her hand is the scallop shell. I blurt out, "Mom, don't believe the woman. She's just a prankster, just mix things up for the money, and don't believe her. She's lying. I'm okay. I'm eating very well, but sometimes the body just doesn't listen. Mom, I'm really okay. Don't listen to the woman." Mom gives me the shell. She asked you to keep this. I take the scallop shell and toss it into the sea. Mom darts to the breakers of the sea where I toss the shell, her pants soaked. She gets nothing but sand. How can you throw that away? Just a scallop shell. Mom shakes her head, mumbles a mantra and apology to the sea. In her native dialect, she tells me a story. It happened many years ago. I was 6, maybe 7. I was at a beach. Saw my uncle toss a scallop shell into the sea. Mom uses her native tongue whenever she speaks directly from her heart, her eyes red. We were starving. It was the 50s. I went there every morning beach combing, looking for any dead small fish left between the fishing nets or whatever to take home to give to the family. Mom was given away when she was a baby, adopted by another family named Maureen Tai, bringing a brother. Later, the family did have a son. Mom continues. I saw my uncle that day. I tried to hide because he always scolded me. I heard Uncle say to his daughter, my cousin, 2 or 3 years younger than me, "Yao Yao, go get the shell." Yao Yao scampered towards the breakers, but was scared by the waves. She got back, grabbed my uncle's pants, saying, "Dad, Dad, Yao Yao scared." Then my uncle lifted her body and tossed her into the sea, like he tossed the shell. She never came back. I saw that. I ran and ran and ran for my life. I got home with nothing in hand, waiting to be scolded by my adopted mother. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was a lovely reading, and I think as Dora has shown us, her story, her verse memoir, includes very sort of powerful themes in a young girl's life. And I know we're told never to judge a book by its cover, but when I first got the book, I was intrigued by 2 things. Firstly, the name Luna Orchid.
Yes.
And secondly, the use of the pen name, and secondly, the design of the cover, which you've told me the story, and actually it's fascinating. So I'd like to ask you, where did Luna Orchid come from?
All right.
And tell us the story of the design.
Okay. Now, I don't know if you should call this a pseudonym, because usually a pseudonym is a fictitious name used by an author. For me, actually, the name Luna Orchid is closer to my Chinese name. So my Chinese name is Yut Lan. Yut means the moon, Lan means orchid. So although most of my friends, they know by my English name, Dora, but because it's actually a name that I picked up when I was requested by my primary school teacher, and my parents, they've never been to school, they don't know A to Z. So that name actually has no meaning to them, although it's the name that I go by most of the time. But when I was thinking of this book, I think because this book has a lot of stories in my own life, it has also a story related to my family. So I want to pick a name that's actually closer to my heart.
Yeah.
So that's why I picked the pen name Luna Orchid. So it's actually less of a pseudonym, more of my
A
real
translation.
name. A translation of my real name. Yeah.
That's brilliant.
So as I told you, the book, this first novel, is about, on the surface, the story is about eating disorders. So when I first, when Scholastic Asia was designing the cover, they actually came back with like a glass of water with like a little orange next to it, because the theme of eating disorder and anorexia and things like that. But I think I have suggested them actually for a different design, because for me, eating disorders is only the symptom. A deeper reason for that happens is the fact that there's a lot of things that the protagonist cannot say. So if you know Chinese character, this character actually means the mouth. So having a person inside a mouth, if you look at the character mouth with a person, actually it means imprisoned. So for that, so it's the imprisonment of the main character in a sense that she cannot speak out, she cannot voice out what she has been going through.
And that's the main theme of the book, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really about, not being able to speak. And I guess there's a thread as well. Is that deliberate as well? That it's made of string, and I don't know, pull one and it all unravels? Or?
Yeah, that part is actually the book designer. But when I first told him I don't want it to be just a character, I think if you read the book, there's a lot of thoughts, a lot of internal struggles. So I want it to be kind of, I was thinking of wire or strings, just a bundle of things that makes it into a character. But I like it, the designer has chosen a thread.
Yeah. No, it's very symbolic. Yeah. And also, I mean, the symbolism is also, I guess, in the form of the novel. I mean, it's quite unusual for children's books, and this is a young adult book. So, but it's not usual for middle grade young adult books to be written as verse memoirs, in verse form. And I was wondering, is that a form which was, did you write with that in mind, or did it become a verse? How did it become a verse memoir? Actually,
I first started writing it as in prose, and I think that was maybe 2008. Yes, some of the critic group members are here, so they have read it as in prose. But I think it was Mio, actually, one of our members, who suggested me, why don't you consider writing it in verse novel? Actually, I didn't know much about verse novel, so I started reading it, and I started playing with it, and started writing it in verse, and it became very natural, and it was a lot easier for me to write in verse, and then I started it, and it just went all the way to the end. So, but I think because the topic of the book is quite heavy, so having verse, even just physically, you look at it, it has a lot of space, and I think it gives readers kind of room to breathe, and also give me a lot more flexibility to express that I don't need to write everything in details, but I can use a lot of metaphors, a lot of different symbolisms to express.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it works in this in this book.
No, it's very beautiful, and you touched on, you know, the fact that it does deal with quite, you know, traumatic events and difficult topics. And you did mention, I mean, how much of this book is autobiographical, and to the extent it was, how challenging was it to actually put it all down in on a you know, on paper?
That's actually a question I kept asking myself, because it's actually a very difficult question to answer, because let's say we have a conversation here today, and then later we're going to tell people what has happened. My memory, what I say to another person, could be very different from what you say. So what I mean is, in the book, there is some part of it actually happened, but there's a great deal of it actually didn't happen. But at the same time, it's almost like I have experienced it, even not in the actual event. I don't know if you understand. It's almost is my interpretation of what has happened, although my interpretation was not actually real. But what is real?
Yeah.
So what is real after all? Right. So I don't know if I answer your question. I would say the voice is very authentic. The voice, the protagonist is very authentic. But don't look at every event as something. There is not a diary. This is definitely not a diary. So
I mean, do you think it was even to the point of, you know, as you're writing the real events, you think of things that it could have gone this way?
Exactly.
I
think that's actually, there's almost things that actually I'm not sure has happened or not. I almost felt this has happened, but if I trace back in my memory, it's not true. So even I myself could not answer that question directly, whether it's real or not, how authentic this is. But I would say the voice is very authentic. Yes.
No, your voice does shine through, and I guess that brings me to my next question is, you know, your Chinese is your Cantonese is your first language. And so how natural was it to write, because this book isn't a translation, it's written in English. How easy or hard or why did you choose English as the medium to tell your story?
If you read the beginning of the book, it actually talks quite a lot about there is a lot of taboo in the Chinese culture, in which a lot of things you're not supposed to say. It could be about death, it could be about things about sex, it could be just a lot of restraint of what you are allowed to say. And I think because of that, it will be actually difficult, if not impossible, for me to tell the story in Chinese. I think I will have a lot of inhibition of, I will control myself what I would allow myself to say in Chinese. But in English, in a way, it's a language that I adopt. It's also a language that I feel I have a little distance. So it gives me the room to breathe in order to write the story, I think. Yeah.
So the freedom that you're looking for, right, or your protagonist is looking for, is also mirrored in your own writing process. Another thing I realized, and listening to you read it as well, is that you have your verses, and each verse is linked to the next. You sort of, so if you don't mind, I'll just read this. So, for example, we have, the library is my asylum. No talking, ideal for someone who does not know how. A sea of options, ideal for a life with so very few. Endless brave new worlds in books, ideal for someone who wants to escape her own. That finishes that verse. And you move to the next one, it starts with, I escape into Russian novels because they are so very thick and stay somewhere for very long without returning too soon to current reality. And so forth. So I found it really interesting that you have a line here, and then your poems, how it joins up is also, you have a line that goes through. The last line joins onto the next. Was that deliberate, or was it just a happy coincidence?
No, it's definitely not a coincidence. It's deliberate, but I think it's more for the symbolic reason, because I think sometimes when you're writing verse novel, you end up having a lot of verses, but you're trying to tell a cohesive story. So in order to make the little verses and the whole story kind of linked together, so I thought I want to put the link there. But I think also in my head, I think a deeper message is probably I feel every single thing that happens in life, it has an impact. It affects to it something later, you like it or not. A word that you say, a gesture that you show, a choice that you make, it will make an impact sometimes later. And I think the whole novel is kind of showing, how one thing and the other thing links together. Yeah, but going back to that, if I could actually do a little bit more work on the, book writer don't usually have a choice to control about book design. But if I were to do it, I would probably just peel one line, one thread here, and I would go around at the back, and I would tie a ribbon at the back. So I think it's, as much as it's a very difficult story, but in the end, I think it's also a gift. So I would put that, the little part, to make the whole story like really tied it up in a ribbon.
Well, now that it is published and your gift is here, what is your greatest wish for your story?
I think I wrote it with the intention my readers are adolescents and probably Hong Kong Chinese. But it doesn't mean that this story is only for teenagers. I think for adults, that it's a book that I think growing up in Hong Kong, especially for someone who has also dealt with eating disorders for many years, primarily have nobody knows about it. I would want people to feel a little bit more relaxed and more able to speak. I think, but I think if I were to say one thing for not just teenagers but for everybody, it will be I think the message I would have is to be okay, just to be okay with yourself. And I think that's primarily what in my whole life, I think, or for everybody, that one needs to know or needs to do, is to find a way to accept yourself, find a way to be okay with yourself. So in the end, you'll be able to breathe, you're able to talk, you're able to relate to others. So
well, I thank you for being okay with yourself. I think it also takes a great deal of courage to be vulnerable, verbally, let alone in a 200 over page book. So thank you for your courage and your bravery. And I know at the end of the book, the main character goes and leaves for her studies overseas, and I know you did yourself many years ago when you went to Canada. And because lots of is there something you would want to say to young people who were once that age and who are embarking either for studies overseas or leaving Hong Kong for life overseas? If you had a message that you could give them, what would you say to them?
that's quite a charging question. I would say take risk, have fun, and just just try and don't be afraid.
That's it. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for your courage, for sharing your story with us and your thoughts. And we are very, very honored, of course, to have you here with us today. So big round of applause for Luna Orchid.
Thank you.